Intelligence often carries a hidden cost that few people talk about. Many people grow up believing that becoming smarter will make life easier, relationships stronger, and success more attainable. Society praises intelligence as a gift, encouraging people to study harder, think critically, and develop a deeper understanding of the world. Yet there is another side to intelligence that receives far less attention. The more deeply a person understands reality, the more difficult it can become to relate to those around them. Instead of creating stronger connections, intelligence can gradually create distance. It becomes harder to find people who share the same curiosity, the same depth of thought, or the same desire to question life beyond its surface. This is why many highly intelligent individuals experience a profound sense of isolation, even when surrounded by family, friends, or colleagues. Isolation does not always mean physical loneliness. A person can attend parties, work with dozens of colleagues, or spend every day with loved ones while still feeling completely alone. Emotional and intellectual isolation often much more painful than simply being by oneself. Imagine trying to discuss ideas that genuinely excite you, only to realize that the people around you quickly lose interest. They change the subject, dismiss your thoughts as overcomplicated, or respond with jokes because they feel uncomfortable. Over time, these experiences teach intelligent people to remain silent. They stop expressing their deepest thoughts because they know few people truly understand them. One of the reasons intelligence leads to isolation is that it changes the way a person sees the world. Most people naturally focus on practical concerns such as earning money, maintaining relationships, pursuing entertainment, and following daily routines. These activities are not wrong. They are simply part of ordinary life. However, a highly reflective person often cannot stop asking deeper questions. Why do people behave the way they do? What is the purpose behind ambition? Why do societies repeat the same mistakes throughout history? Why do people accept beliefs without questioning them? These questions become impossible to ignore. While others are satisfied with simple explanations, the intelligent mind keeps searching for greater understanding. This difference in perspective creates an invisible wall. Conversations that others find exciting may feel shallow to someone who constantly seeks meaning beneath appearances. Discussions about gossip, celebrity culture, or temporary trends rarely satisfy a mind that naturally gravitates toward philosophy, psychology, science, history, or human nature. At the same time, when that person introduces deeper subjects, others may see them as overly serious or unnecessarily complicated. Neither side is intentionally trying to reject the other, but the difference in interests makes genuine connection increasingly difficult. Another reason intelligent people often become isolated is their habit of observing more than speaking. They pay close attention to facial expressions, tone of voice, contradictions in behavior, and hidden motives. While others hear words, they also notice what remains unsaid. This heightened awareness helps them understand situations more accurately, but it also makes social interactions exhausting. They begin noticing dishonesty hidden beneath politeness, insecurity disguised as confidence, and selfish motives behind acts that appear generous. Once these patterns become visible, it becomes difficult to ignore them. Trust becomes harder to give because they constantly analyze what lies beneath the surface. Overthinking also contributes to this sense of separation. Intelligent individuals rarely accept experiences at face value. After every conversation, they may replay events in their minds, wondering whether they said the right thing, whether someone misunderstood them, or whether a deeper meaning existed behind another person's words. While others move on quickly, they continue examining every detail. This habit often creates unnecessary stress and emotional fatigue. Instead of enjoying the present moment, they become trapped inside endless cycles of reflection. Many intelligent people also develop unusually high standards for friendship. Rather than seeking large social circles, they long for meaningful conversations and genuine emotional honesty. They are less interested in popularity than in authenticity. Unfortunately, finding individuals who share these values is not always easy. As a result, they may prefer solitude over superficial relationships. This choice is often misunderstood by society. Others assume they are arrogant, antisocial, or emotionally distant, when in reality they simply crave deeper connections than they can easily find. History offers countless examples of brilliant individuals who struggled with isolation. Philosophers, scientists, artists, and writers often spent much of their lives misunderstood by those around them. Their ideas challenged accepted beliefs, forcing society to confront uncomfortable truths. At first, many were ignored or ridiculed because people naturally resist ideas that threaten familiar ways of thinking. Only years later did society recognize the value of their contributions. This pattern reminds us that intellectual loneliness is not a modern problem but a recurring part of human history. Another aspect of intelligence that contributes to isolation is increased sensitivity. Intelligence is not only about solving mathematical problems or remembering facts. It often involves emotional awareness as well. Intelligent people may notice suffering that others overlook. They recognize injustice, hypocrisy, manipulation, and inequality with greater clarity. News of conflict, corruption, or human cruelty affects them more deeply because they cannot easily detach themselves from these realities. Their minds constantly connect individual events to larger patterns, making it difficult to ignore the world's problems. This heightened sensitivity sometimes causes intelligent individuals to withdraw from social environments. Loud gatherings, meaningless arguments, and constant small talk become mentally draining rather than enjoyable. They often prefer quiet places where they can think, read, write, or simply reflect. Solitude becomes a form of recovery rather than a punishment. Unfortunately, society often interprets this preference as weakness or social awkwardness instead of recognizing it as a natural response to mental overstimulation. Modern technology has made this problem even more noticeable. Social media rewards short attention spans, emotional reactions, and simplified opinions. Complex discussions are often reduced to catchy slogans or brief posts. Intelligent individuals who value nuance and careful reasoning may feel increasingly disconnected from these environments. They realize that meaningful conversations are becoming rarer while quick entertainment dominates public attention. This deepens the feeling that they exist in a world moving in a different direction from their own values. However, intelligence itself is not the true cause of isolation. The real challenge lies in the rarity of finding people who share similar levels of curiosity and depth. A person who discovers even one genuine companion capable of discussing ideas openly often experiences tremendous relief. Such friendships may be uncommon, but they demonstrate that intelligence does not require permanent loneliness. The difficulty lies not in thinking deeply but in finding others willing to explore those depths together. It is also important to understand that isolation can become dangerous if left unchecked. Some intelligent individuals begin believing that no one will ever understand them. They isolate themselves completely, avoiding relationships because they assume disappointment is inevitable. Over time, this belief can create unnecessary bitterness. Intelligence should not become an excuse for emotional distance. While deep understanding may reduce the number of compatible relationships, it also increases the value of those rare connections that do exist. The healthiest intelligent individuals learn to balance depth with empathy. They recognize that not everyone shares their interests, yet every person possesses experiences and perspectives worth understanding. Rather than expecting every conversation to become philosophical, they appreciate ordinary human moments as well. They learn that wisdom is not measured only by intellectual complexity but also by compassion, patience, and the ability to communicate with people from different backgrounds. True intelligence is not proven by standing above others but by building bridges wherever possible. A brilliant mind that cannot communicate remains isolated, while a wise mind learns to translate profound ideas into language others can appreciate. This ability does not diminish intelligence, it expands its influence. Some of history's greatest thinkers were remembered not merely because they understood complex truths, but because they could explain those truths in ways that inspired others. Ultimately, the isolation associated with intelligence is neither a punishment nor a destiny. It is a challenge that demands self-awareness and emotional maturity. Thinking deeply may separate a person from the crowd, but it also opens the door to extraordinary insight, creativity, and personal growth. Solitude can become a place where ideas flourish, character strengthens, and wisdom develops. The goal is not to escape isolation entirely, but to transform it into an opportunity for understanding oneself more completely. In doing so, intelligence becomes more than the ability to think deeply. It becomes the ability to live meaningfully despite standing apart from the ordinary flow of the world. Many people believe that knowledge is power and that understanding the world more deeply naturally leads to a better life. From childhood, we are taught to value education, critical thinking, and curiosity because they are seen as paths to success and fulfillment. However, there is another side to knowledge that is rarely discussed. The deeper a person understands reality, the more difficult it often becomes to find peace within it. Greater awareness does not simply reveal beauty and wisdom. It also exposes pain, contradiction, injustice, and uncertainty. This is why many philosophers, including Schopenhauer, argued that intelligence and suffering are closely connected. According to his philosophy, the more a person sees, the more they are forced to confront truths that others either overlook or deliberately ignore. The relationship between intelligence and suffering begins with perception. Two people can witness the same event yet experience it in completely different ways. One person may quickly move on, accepting what happened without much thought. Another may spend hours or even days analyzing every detail, searching for causes, consequences, and deeper meanings. An intelligent mind rarely accepts appearances at face value. Instead, it constantly asks questions. Why did this happen? What does it reveal about human nature? Could it have been prevented? What larger pattern does it represent? While this habit strengthens understanding, it also increases emotional burden because every answer often leads to even more difficult questions. One of the greatest sources of suffering for intelligent people is their inability to ignore reality. Many individuals naturally focus on positive distractions. They enjoy entertainment, pursue goals, celebrate achievements, and avoid thinking about uncomfortable truths. This ability protects their emotional well-being. Intelligent individuals, however, often struggle to look away. They notice inequality where others see normality. They recognize manipulation where others see leadership. They detect hypocrisy hidden beneath polite words and false promises. Their minds continually connect individual events to broader social, political, and psychological patterns. As a result, problems that appear isolated to others become part of a much larger picture of human behavior. This heightened awareness also changes how intelligent people view success. Society often defines success through wealth, fame, power, or social status. Many people dedicate their entire lives to achieving these goals without questioning whether they will truly bring lasting satisfaction. Intelligent individuals frequently recognize the temporary nature of these achievements. They understand that money can disappear, beauty fades, popularity changes, and power eventually passes to someone else. Because they see how temporary these rewards are, they often struggle to feel genuinely motivated by them. What excites others may leave them emotionally empty because they recognize that external success cannot permanently satisfy the human spirit. Another reason intelligence increases suffering is the awareness of mortality. Most people know they will die someday, but they rarely spend much time thinking about it. Daily responsibilities and routines keep existential questions in the background. Highly reflective individuals, however, often confront mortality directly. They realize that every achievement, every possession, and every relationship exists within the limited span of a human life. This awareness can create deep anxiety. It forces them to ask difficult questions about purpose, meaning, and legacy. Rather than simply living, they constantly evaluate what living actually means. Intelligent people also tend to carry a heavier emotional load because they empathize more deeply with the suffering of others. They may feel distressed by wars occurring thousands of miles away, environmental destruction, poverty, injustice, or social inequality. Even when these problems do not directly affect their own lives, they struggle to ignore them because they understand their significance. While many people can separate themselves emotionally from global issues, highly aware individuals often feel personally burdened by humanity's collective struggles. Their compassion becomes both a strength and a source of pain. Another important factor is perfectionism. Intelligence often encourages people to set exceptionally high standards for themselves. They recognize countless possibilities for improvement, making it difficult to feel satisfied with their own work. Every accomplishment seems incomplete because they immediately notice flaws that others overlook. Instead of celebrating progress, they focus on imperfections. This constant self-evaluation creates frustration and emotional exhaustion. The more capable they become, the higher their expectations rise, creating an endless cycle where satisfaction remains just out of reach. Relationships also become more complicated for intelligent individuals. Greater awareness allows them to recognize subtle emotional dynamics that others miss. They notice inconsistencies between words and actions, hidden insecurities, manipulation, and emotional dishonesty. While this insight helps them avoid deception, it also makes trust more difficult. They may hesitate before opening up because they anticipate disappointment or misunderstanding. As a result, relationships that appear simple to others become emotionally complex. Instead of enjoying spontaneous connections, they often analyze every interaction, unintentionally creating distance between themselves and others. Overthinking further intensifies suffering. An intelligent mind rarely rests. After conversations end, It continues examining what was said and what remained unsaid. It imagines alternative outcomes, predicts future consequences, and revisits past decisions repeatedly. This mental activity can be valuable when solving problems, but it becomes harmful when applied to every aspect of life. Simple mistakes become sources of endless reflection. Minor disagreements evolve into prolonged internal debates. Instead of finding closure, the mind continuously searches for better answers that may never exist. Modern society amplifies this burden even further. Today, intelligent individuals have immediate access to an overwhelming amount of information. Every day brings news of conflict, economic uncertainty, environmental crises, political division, and technological disruption. The human brain evolved to solve local problems within small communities, not to process the suffering of billions of people simultaneously. Yet highly aware individuals often consume enormous amounts of information, feeling responsible for understanding every global issue. This constant exposure increases anxiety because the problems seem endless while personal ability to solve them remains limited. Schopenhauer believed that human desire itself is another major source of suffering. According to him, people are driven by an endless will that constantly pushes them toward new goals. Once one desire is fulfilled, another immediately replaces it. This cycle prevents lasting happiness because satisfaction is always temporary. Intelligent individuals recognize this pattern more clearly than others. They understand that achieving one dream rarely produces permanent fulfillment. Instead of feeling liberated by success, they often realize that new desires and new frustrations quickly emerge. This awareness makes it difficult to chase ambitions with complete enthusiasm because they already understand the temporary nature of the reward. History repeatedly demonstrates the connection between intelligence and suffering. Many of humanity's greatest thinkers lived lives marked by loneliness, criticism, or emotional struggle. Socrates questioned accepted beliefs and was sentenced to death. Galileo challenged scientific assumptions and faced persecution. Friedrich Nietzsche spent much of his life isolated and misunderstood. Vincent van Gogh created extraordinary art while battling profound psychological suffering. These individuals were not unhappy simply because they were intelligent, but because their awareness placed them at odds with the societies in which they lived. They perceived realities that others were unwilling or unable to accept. However, it is important to avoid misunderstanding this idea. Intelligence does not automatically condemn someone to misery. Many intelligent people live joyful and meaningful lives. The crucial difference lies in how they respond to their awareness. Some become overwhelmed by everything they cannot change. Others accept life's imperfections while choosing to focus their energy on meaningful work, creativity, learning, and compassionate relationships. Intelligence provides deeper understanding, but wisdom determines how that understanding is used. Wisdom teaches that not every truth must become a burden. It reminds us that although suffering is an unavoidable part of existence, it is not the only part. Beauty, love, curiosity, friendship, creativity, and kindness continue to exist alongside pain. A wise person acknowledges both realities without becoming consumed by either. They recognize that the world contains injustice without allowing despair to define their entire outlook. Ultimately, deeper understanding increases suffering because it removes comforting illusions. It exposes life's uncertainty, reveals humanity's contradictions, and forces difficult questions that many people never ask. Yet this same awareness also creates opportunities for extraordinary growth. Those who see more clearly possess the ability to make wiser decisions, show greater compassion, create meaningful ideas, and contribute lasting value to the world. The challenge is not to reduce intelligence but to cultivate resilience alongside it. Knowledge may reveal life's hardships, but wisdom teaches how to carry those truths without losing hope. In that balance lies the possibility of living not only intelligently, but meaningfully. Many people spend their entire lives believing that intelligence is the greatest advantage a person can possess. From childhood, we are encouraged to study harder, ask more questions, and develop our minds because knowledge is associated with success, respect, and opportunity. Yet Arthur Schopenhauer presented a deeply unsettling idea that challenged this common belief. He argued that ignorance often creates more happiness than intelligence. According to him, people who understand less about the harsh realities of existence frequently experience greater peace of mind than those who constantly question the nature of life. This does not mean ignorance is morally superior or intellectually desirable, but it suggests that limited awareness can protect the human mind from emotional burdens that deeper understanding inevitably brings. To understand this idea, Imagine two people living in the same world. One person accepts life exactly as it appears. They wake up, go to work, spend time with family, enjoy entertainment, pursue personal goals, and rarely question the larger meaning behind their daily routine. They find happiness in small pleasures such as sharing meals with friends, watching movies, celebrating holidays, or planning vacations. Their life may not be extraordinary, but it feels comfortable because they do not spend much time reflecting on life's uncertainties or contradictions. The second person experiences the same world very differently. Instead of simply living through each day, they constantly analyze everything around them. They question why society values certain achievements, why injustice exists, why human beings repeat destructive behaviors throughout history, and whether lasting happiness is even possible. Every event becomes an opportunity for deeper reflection. While this awareness expands their understanding, it also introduces emotional complexity. They cannot enjoy simple pleasures as easily because their minds continuously search for deeper truths hidden beneath ordinary experiences. Schopenhauer believed that this difference explains why ignorance often appears to produce greater happiness. People who do not constantly question reality are less likely to become overwhelmed by it. They accept life's routines without demanding that every experience carry profound meaning. They celebrate success without immediately worrying about its temporary nature. They enjoy relationships without endlessly analyzing every emotion or possible future outcome. Their limited reflection allows them to remain emotionally present in ways that highly analytical individuals often struggle to achieve. One reason ignorance can create happiness is that it protects people from existential anxiety. Every human being will eventually confront questions about death, purpose, and the meaning of existence. However, many people spend little time thinking about these issues because daily life naturally occupies their attention. Responsibilities such as work, family, education, and personal goals keep their minds focused on practical concerns. As a result, they experience fewer moments of existential fear. Intelligent individuals, by contrast, often revisit these questions repeatedly. They recognize the temporary nature of life and struggle to find satisfying answers. Their search for meaning becomes both intellectually fascinating and emotionally exhausting. Another source of happiness in ignorance is certainty. Human beings naturally seek stability and clear explanations for the world around them. People who accept widely held beliefs without questioning them often experience psychological comfort because certainty reduces anxiety. They trust established traditions, social norms, cultural expectations, or religious teachings without constantly examining alternative possibilities. This certainty creates emotional security. Intelligent individuals, however, frequently question everything. They analyze evidence, challenge assumptions, and remain open to multiple interpretations. While this intellectual honesty increases knowledge, it also replaces certainty with doubt. The more they learn, the more they realize how much remains unknown. This phenomenon becomes especially visible in everyday decision-making. Someone who rarely questions themselves can make choices quickly and confidently. They choose careers, relationships, or lifestyles based on familiar expectations. Even if mistakes occur, they rarely spend much time regretting them. Highly intelligent individuals often experience the opposite. They evaluate countless possibilities before making decisions, carefully considering every advantage and disadvantage. Even after deciding, they continue wondering whether another choice might have been better. Their ability to recognize multiple perspectives creates hesitation where simpler minds experience confidence. Schopenhauer also believed that ordinary pleasures satisfy people who remain relatively unaware of life's deeper contradictions. Activities such as watching sports, attending social events, earning promotions, buying new possessions, or receiving praise provide genuine enjoyment because they fit naturally within their understanding of success. Intelligent individuals often recognize the temporary nature of these achievements. They understand that material possessions lose their excitement, careers eventually end, and public admiration can disappear overnight. Because they see beyond immediate rewards, they sometimes struggle to experience the same excitement others feel. Modern society provides countless examples of this contrast. Social media platforms, television programs, celebrity culture, and endless entertainment attract billions of people every day. Many individuals enjoy these activities without questioning their psychological effects or deeper significance. They find relaxation, excitement, and connection through them. Highly reflective people, however, often analyze how these systems influence behavior, shape desires, and manipulate attention. Instead of simply enjoying entertainment, they examine its consequences. As a result, Experiences that bring comfort to others sometimes generate concern or dissatisfaction within analytical minds. Another reason ignorance often appears happier is that it limits emotional exposure. People who know little about global conflicts, environmental crises, economic instability, or political corruption naturally experience less emotional stress related to those issues. Their world remains relatively small and manageable. Highly informed individuals, on the other hand, constantly absorb information about suffering occurring across the planet. Every news report adds another burden to their awareness. While greater knowledge promotes compassion and responsibility, it also increases emotional exhaustion because the mind struggles to process problems it cannot solve. Relationships also illustrate this principle. Individuals who trust easily often enjoy simpler and more relaxed social lives. They assume good intentions, forgive mistakes quickly, and avoid analyzing every interaction. Intelligent people frequently notice hidden motives, inconsistencies, or emotional complexities that others overlook. This awareness protects them from manipulation but also makes trust more difficult. They may question whether affection is genuine, whether promises will be kept, or whether relationships are built upon authentic understanding. Their greater awareness creates emotional caution that sometimes prevents spontaneous happiness. Schopenhauer described human life as being driven by endless desire. According to his philosophy, people constantly chase new goals, believing each achievement will finally satisfy them. Once one desire is fulfilled, another immediately appears. Most people remain trapped in this cycle without recognizing it. They continue pursuing wealth, status, romance, or success because they believe fulfillment lies just beyond their current position. Intelligent individuals often recognize the endless nature of desire itself. They understand that satisfaction rarely lasts. This realization removes some of the excitement that motivates ordinary ambition. While others chase dreams with enthusiasm, the intelligent person sometimes wonders whether the destination will truly bring lasting peace. However, Schopenhauer did not suggest that ignorance should be celebrated or intentionally pursued. He did not encourage people to reject education or avoid thinking deeply. Instead, he simply observed a painful truth about human psychology. Happiness often depends upon certain illusions. Believing that life is completely fair, that success guarantees fulfillment, or that every event happens for a clear reason can provide emotional comfort even when those beliefs are imperfect. Intelligence gradually removes these comforting illusions, replacing them with greater complexity and uncertainty. Despite this, ignorance has serious limitations. While it may protect happiness, it can also prevent growth. A person who never questions anything may remain comfortable, but they also risk becoming easily manipulated. They may accept injustice because they fail to recognize it, follow harmful traditions without examination, or support destructive ideas simply because everyone else does. Their happiness may depend on avoiding truths that deserve attention. In this sense, ignorance offers emotional comfort at the cost of deeper understanding. True wisdom lies somewhere between complete ignorance and endless analysis. A wise person continues seeking knowledge while recognizing that not every truth must destroy inner peace. They understand life's imperfections without allowing them to eliminate joy. They appreciate ordinary pleasures without becoming enslaved by them. They question beliefs while remaining humble enough to accept uncertainty. Most importantly, they recognize that happiness does not require pretending the world is perfect. Instead, it comes from accepting reality while choosing to focus on what remains meaningful despite its imperfections. Ultimately, the idea that ignorance creates happiness challenges one of humanity's most cherished assumptions. It reminds us that greater knowledge brings greater responsibility, greater awareness, and often greater emotional burden. Yet it also reminds us that the purpose of intelligence is not simply to accumulate facts but to develop wisdom. Knowledge alone may reveal life's painful truths, but wisdom teaches us how to live with those truths without surrendering our ability to experience gratitude, compassion, hope, and joy. The happiest life is not necessarily the one that knows the least or the one that knows the most. It is the one that balances understanding with acceptance, curiosity with peace, and truth with the resilience to continue living fully despite everything we have come to know. Since the beginning of human civilization, societies have celebrated intelligence in words but often resisted it in practice. People admire inventors, philosophers, scientists, and great thinkers after they become famous, yet history repeatedly shows that these same individuals were frequently ignored, mocked, feared, or even persecuted during their own lifetimes. Arthur Schopenhauer believed this was not a coincidence but a recurring pattern of human nature. According to him, Society is often uncomfortable with people who think differently because independent minds challenge accepted beliefs, expose uncomfortable truths, and disturb the sense of certainty that most people depend on. This is why society often rejects those who think differently. It is not always because their ideas are wrong, but because their ideas force others to question what they have always believed. Human beings naturally seek stability. From childhood, people are taught traditions, cultural values, religious beliefs, social expectations, and accepted ways of living. These systems provide order and predictability, making life feel safe and understandable. Most people rarely question these foundations because doing so creates uncertainty. They find comfort in believing that the world works according to familiar rules. When someone arrives with a completely different perspective, that comfort is suddenly threatened. Instead of carefully examining the new idea, many people instinctively reject it because accepting it would require changing the way they see themselves and the world around them. This psychological reaction is deeply rooted in human nature. The human brain prefers consistency over uncertainty. Once people form opinions, they naturally search for information that confirms what they already believe while ignoring evidence that contradicts their views. Psychologists call this confirmation bias, but long before modern psychology existed, Schopenhauer recognized that people resist ideas which disturb their mental comfort. An independent thinker unintentionally challenges this comfort simply by asking questions others prefer to avoid. Throughout history, many extraordinary individuals experienced this rejection. Socrates encouraged people in ancient Athens to question authority, tradition, and their own assumptions. Rather than celebrating his commitment to truth, society accused him of corrupting the youth and sentenced him to death. His greatest crime was not violence or dishonesty but encouraging independent thinking. His questions exposed weaknesses in accepted beliefs, making those in power uncomfortable. Galileo Galilei experienced a similar fate centuries later. Through observation and scientific reasoning, he concluded that the Earth revolved around the Sun rather than the opposite. His discoveries contradicted powerful religious authorities of the time. Instead of welcoming evidence, society attempted to silence him because accepting his conclusions required abandoning beliefs that had shaped civilization for generations. Truth became less important than preserving existing systems of authority. Another remarkable example is Giordano Bruno. He proposed that the universe was far larger than people imagined and that countless worlds might exist beyond Earth. These revolutionary ideas challenged religious doctrine, and instead of being debated fairly, he was condemned and executed. His tragedy illustrates how societies often punish those who introduce ideas before the public is emotionally prepared to accept them. Friedrich Nietzsche also faced rejection during his lifetime. His philosophical writings challenged traditional morality, religion, and cultural values. Many people considered his ideas dangerous or incomprehensible. He spent much of his life isolated, with only a small audience appreciating his work. Today, however, Nietzsche is recognized as one of the most influential philosophers in modern history. Society eventually celebrated the very ideas it had once rejected. This pattern extends far beyond famous historical figures. Independent thinkers encounter similar resistance in everyday life. Consider a workplace where everyone follows long-established routines without questioning their effectiveness. An employee suggests a new approach that could improve productivity and solve persistent problems. Instead of carefully considering the proposal, colleagues may immediately criticize it simply because it differs from familiar methods. The individual becomes viewed as disruptive rather than innovative. The resistance has little to do with the quality of the idea and much to do with people's attachment to routine. The same dynamic appears in educational environments. Students who ask unusual questions or challenge textbook explanations are sometimes labeled as difficult rather than curious. Education ideally encourages critical thinking, yet classrooms occasionally reward memorization more than independent analysis. Students quickly learn that repeating accepted answers often receives greater approval than exploring original ideas. As a result, many talented minds gradually suppress their curiosity in order to fit within existing expectations. Social relationships reveal this tendency as well. Groups naturally develop shared opinions, customs, and ways of communicating. Someone who consistently questions these unwritten rules risks becoming an outsider. A person who refuses to participate in gossip, consumer culture, or superficial conversations may be considered strange even if their behavior harms no one. Human beings often value belonging more than truth, making conformity socially rewarding while independent thinking carries emotional risks. Schopenhauer believed that mediocrity protects itself by resisting excellence. This does not mean ordinary people are unintelligent or incapable of growth. Rather, it reflects the tendency of groups to defend familiar patterns against change. When someone demonstrates exceptional creativity, insight, or originality, others may experience insecurity. Instead of becoming inspired, they compare themselves to the exceptional individual and feel threatened by the difference. Criticism then becomes a way of protecting self-esteem. By dismissing the thinker as arrogant, unrealistic, or eccentric, people avoid confronting their own limitations. Jealousy also plays a significant role in society's rejection of independent thinkers. Success achieved through originality often attracts admiration from some people and resentment from others. Individuals who feel unable or unwilling to develop similar abilities may attempt to undermine those who possess them. Throughout history, countless innovators encountered ridicule before receiving recognition. Their ideas challenged existing standards, making others feel uncomfortable about their own unwillingness to change. Modern technology has not eliminated this problem. In many ways, it has intensified it. Social media encourages rapid opinions rather than careful reflection. Popular ideas spread quickly because they receive immediate approval, while complex or unconventional perspectives often face misunderstanding. People fear public criticism, so many choose to express only opinions that align with the majority. Independent thinkers who present nuanced arguments frequently become targets of ridicule because thoughtful discussion requires patience, while emotional reactions spread much faster. Algorithms also reinforce conformity by showing users information similar to what they already believe. Instead of exposing people to diverse perspectives, technology often creates echo chambers where existing opinions become stronger. Within these environments, anyone presenting a different viewpoint appears increasingly unusual or threatening. Independent thinking becomes more difficult because social approval depends upon agreeing with the dominant narrative. However, rejection should not always be interpreted as evidence of genius. Not every unpopular idea is correct, and not every person who disagrees with society possesses exceptional insight. Independent thinking requires humility as well as courage. Genuine thinkers remain willing to examine evidence, admit mistakes, and revise their conclusions when necessary. Their goal is not simply to oppose society but to pursue truth regardless of whether it confirms or challenges popular opinion. One of the greatest dangers faced by independent thinkers is loneliness. Constant rejection can lead people to believe they should remain silent. They may hide their opinions, suppress their creativity, or avoid expressing original ideas because the emotional cost feels too high. Over time, this silence deprives society of valuable contributions. Progress depends upon individuals willing to question accepted assumptions despite criticism. Every major scientific discovery, philosophical breakthrough, artistic movement, and technological innovation began with someone who dared to think differently. Fortunately, history also offers hope. Although society often rejects new ideas initially, truth possesses remarkable endurance. Ideas based upon careful reasoning eventually find those willing to understand them. Time often transforms ridicule into respect. Many thinkers who died misunderstood later became celebrated because future generations viewed their ideas without the emotional resistance of their contemporaries. Their perseverance changed the course of history precisely because they refused to abandon their convictions. Schopenhauer believed that those who think independently should not measure their worth by immediate public acceptance. Popularity changes constantly, but truth remains valuable regardless of how many people recognize it. The independent thinker must develop inner strength rather than relying upon external approval. This does not mean becoming arrogant or isolating oneself from society. Instead, it means accepting that meaningful ideas often require patience before they are understood. Ultimately, society rejects those who think differently because change creates discomfort, uncertainty, and fear. Independent minds challenge established beliefs, expose hidden contradictions, and encourage others to confront realities they would rather ignore. Yet despite this resistance, human progress has always depended upon individuals willing to question the ordinary. Every generation benefits from thinkers who refuse to accept easy answers, even when doing so brings criticism instead of praise. Their courage reminds us that true intelligence is not measured by how easily it fits into society but by its willingness to pursue truth even when the world is not ready to hear it. Most people spend their lives searching for happiness in places that society tells them are valuable. They pursue wealth because they believe money will bring security. They chase status because they think recognition will earn them respect. They seek approval from friends, family, and strangers because they assume acceptance will make them feel complete. From childhood, they are taught that success is measured by external achievements, career titles, expensive possessions, social popularity, and public admiration. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that this endless pursuit is one of humanity's greatest illusions. According to him, the wise person eventually realizes that lasting peace cannot be found in the external world because everything outside us is temporary, uncertain, and beyond our complete control. True freedom begins only when a person stops depending on external validation and starts cultivating inner peace. For Schopenhauer, intelligence becomes meaningful only when it leads to wisdom. Knowledge alone is not enough. A person may understand philosophy, science, psychology, and history, yet still remain trapped by anxiety, ambition, and endless desire. Wisdom is the ability to recognize the limitations of the external world and redirect one's attention toward what can truly be controlled. This shift is what Schopenhauer considered the beginning of inner freedom. It is not about escaping reality, but about refusing to let reality dictate one's emotional state. One of the first steps toward inner freedom is accepting solitude. Many people fear being alone because they associate loneliness with failure or rejection. They constantly seek company, entertainment, and social interaction to avoid confronting themselves. Silence makes them uncomfortable because it forces them to face thoughts they normally suppress. Schopenhauer viewed solitude very differently. He believed that solitude is not an enemy but a privilege, especially for those capable of deep thought. A person who enjoys their own company possesses a kind of freedom that no external circumstance can easily destroy. This does not mean rejecting relationships or avoiding human connection. Rather, it means no longer depending on constant companionship to feel complete. Someone who cannot spend time alone often becomes emotionally dependent on others for happiness. Their mood rises and falls according to the opinions, attention, and approval they receive. The wise person gradually frees themselves from this dependence. They appreciate meaningful relationships but remain emotionally stable even when alone. Their peace comes from within rather than from the presence of others. Solitude creates space for reflection, creativity, and self-discovery. Throughout history, many of humanity's greatest thinkers, artists, writers, and scientists produced their most important work during periods of isolation. Away from distractions and social expectations, they could examine their thoughts honestly and develop ideas that changed the world. Solitude becomes not a prison but a workshop where wisdom quietly grows. Instead of fearing silence, the wise person learns to value it as an opportunity to better understand themselves. Another path toward inner freedom is reducing unnecessary desires. Schopenhauer argued that human suffering is fueled by endless wanting. As soon as one desire is satisfied, another immediately appears. A person works tirelessly to buy a new house, only to begin wanting a larger one. They achieve career success but soon become dissatisfied because someone else has achieved more. They receive praise today and worry about losing it tomorrow. This endless cycle keeps people trapped in permanent dissatisfaction because happiness always depends on reaching the next goal. The wise person eventually recognizes this pattern. Instead of allowing desires to multiply endlessly, they begin simplifying their life. They distinguish between genuine needs and artificial wants created by society. They realize that many ambitions exist only because they compare themselves to others. When comparison disappears, countless unnecessary desires disappear with it. Inner freedom grows each time a person stops allowing external standards to determine their sense of worth. Modern society constantly encourages comparison. Social media presents carefully edited images of perfect lifestyles, luxurious vacations, successful careers, and seemingly flawless relationships. People compare their ordinary lives to these unrealistic portrayals and conclude that they are falling behind. Schopenhauer would likely argue that this comparison creates endless suffering because it encourages individuals to seek happiness in appearances rather than reality. The wise person understands that every human life contains struggles invisible to outsiders. Instead of chasing impossible perfection, they focus on personal growth and inner contentment. Another essential aspect of inner freedom is letting go of the need for approval. Many people shape their entire identity around pleasing others. They choose careers based on family expectations, express opinions they do not truly believe, and suppress their authentic personality to gain acceptance. While this may produce temporary approval, it gradually destroys individuality. The person becomes disconnected from their own values because they constantly adjust themselves to satisfy changing social expectations. Schopenhauer believed that true freedom begins when a person stops asking, "What do others think of me?" and starts asking, "Am I living according to my own principles?" This shift transforms life. Criticism loses much of its power because self-worth no longer depends on public opinion. Praise becomes pleasant but unnecessary. The individual develops confidence rooted in integrity rather than popularity. They understand that attempting to satisfy everyone is impossible because different people will always hold different expectations. Art also plays an important role in Schopenhauer's philosophy of inner freedom. He believed that genuine artistic experiences temporarily free us from endless desire. When listening to beautiful music, admiring a painting, reading great literature, or contemplating nature, people stop thinking about personal ambitions and anxieties. For a brief moment, they experience pure awareness without constantly chasing something else. This state provides relief from the endless striving that normally dominates human life. Among all forms of art, Schopenhauer considered music especially powerful. Unlike language, music communicates directly with human emotion. It expresses experiences beyond words and creates moments where the mind becomes completely absorbed in beauty rather than worry. These moments remind people that life contains value beyond material achievement. Beauty itself becomes a source of peace. Philosophy serves a similar purpose. Rather than offering simple answers, philosophy teaches people how to think more clearly about existence. It encourages humility by revealing how limited human knowledge truly is. Instead of pretending certainty where none exists, philosophy invites individuals to embrace uncertainty with courage. This intellectual honesty becomes another form of freedom because it removes the pressure to possess absolute answers to every question. Acceptance is perhaps the most difficult lesson of all. Human beings naturally resist reality when it conflicts with their desires. They wish life were always fair, relationships always lasting, health always permanent, and success always guaranteed. Unfortunately, reality does not obey these wishes. People lose loved ones, experience failure, face illness, and encounter injustice despite their best efforts. Much suffering arises not only from these events themselves, but from refusing to accept that they are part of life. Schopenhauer believed that wisdom requires accepting the world as it is rather than endlessly wishing it were different. Acceptance does not mean approving of suffering or abandoning efforts to improve life. Instead, it means recognizing the limits of personal control. A person cannot control every event, but they can control how they respond. This realization creates profound emotional freedom because it redirects energy away from impossible struggles and toward meaningful action. Inner freedom also requires emotional discipline. Intelligent people often experience intense emotions because they perceive life's complexities more deeply. Without discipline, these emotions can become overwhelming. The wise person learns to observe emotions without allowing them to dominate every decision. They recognize anger, fear, disappointment, and sadness as natural experiences rather than permanent identities. Like changing weather, emotions come and go. Inner peace grows when a person stops fighting every emotional storm and instead learns to remain steady through it. Compassion naturally develops alongside wisdom. The more deeply people understand themselves, the more easily they understand others. They recognize that every person struggles with fears, insecurities, disappointments, and unanswered questions. Instead of responding with judgment, they respond with patience. They no longer expect perfection from themselves or anyone else. This compassion reduces unnecessary conflict and strengthens meaningful relationships without creating emotional dependence. Ultimately, Schopenhauer's vision of inner freedom is not about escaping the world but about changing one's relationship with it. The world remains imperfect. Society continues chasing wealth, status, and endless desire. People continue seeking approval and fearing rejection. Yet the wise person gradually becomes less controlled by these forces. They discover that peace is not found by changing the entire world but by transforming their own perspective. True freedom does not come from possessing everything one wants. It comes from no longer needing everything one once believed was necessary. It comes from enjoying solitude without fearing loneliness, appreciating beauty without demanding permanence, pursuing knowledge without becoming imprisoned by it, and accepting life's uncertainties without surrendering hope. The wise person understands that external success may come or go, relationships may change, and circumstances may remain unpredictable, but a peaceful mind built upon self-awareness, acceptance, and wisdom cannot easily be taken away. In the end, Schopenhauer reminds us that the greatest victory is not conquering the world but mastering ourselves. A person who depends on wealth, status, or approval will always remain vulnerable because those things can disappear overnight. But a person who cultivates inner freedom carries a source of peace that no external event can completely destroy. That is the quiet strength of wisdom. It is not loud, celebrated, or always understood by society, but it is perhaps the deepest form of success a human being can ever achieve.